Good morning. Welcome to the MSP industry's first vendor-agnostic automation conference. Since this is our first conference, I have to apologize, our budget is low, so we don't have any famous rappers like Flo Rida. But we do have one thing. We've assembled a room full of 200 or more of the MSP industry's best automation experts and minds. So, to get the most out of Flow, yes, you need to listen to the talks, go see the vendors that made it so we could do this conference, but even better, after the talks, before the talks, find someone you've never met before, pull them aside, and ask them, where are you in your automation journey? And if they're ahead of you, ask for pointers. And if they're behind you, help them, give them some pointers. It's my estimation that only about 1 to 3% of the MSP market is thinking like you are right now about automation. So you folks are using that to your advantage to get ahead and lead the industry from the front. So before we kick off today and our talks, I want us to be able to frame it from where we came from, where we are now, and my predictions about where we're going. When we started Rewst in 2021, I asked a lot of MSPs questions about automations. I didn't want to make any assumptions. And sure, there were a couple MSPs that gave us some good automation ideas, but a vast majority of them told me we're fully automated. There is no need for any automation solutions. Only a crazy person would have done what we did. We used RMMs primarily as our automation tool in the past. This doesn't mean there's a problem with RMM. It was just what our mentality was at the time of what is automation. So we built scripts. We had our RMM execute them. Maybe we used built-in functionality. We weren't building automations that connected products together to do much larger things. The most advanced automations were usually built outside of our RMM and triggered by it. Eventually, we'd bang our head on the table because we can't finish the script that we need to get done for an automation. And so we would go out and buy a single-purpose tool that all it did was this one thing because we didn't have an automation strategy. And we filled our stacks full of single-purpose, single-use tools. Now let's talk about today. I could argue using the technology lifecycle adoption curve. If we look at MSPs around the world, it's probably not 1 to 3%. You folks are probably the innovators at less than 1% of MSPs thinking the way you are. And I believe it's not just innovation, but it's also trying to get ahead of your peers to use it to improve your business value to the clients. Seeing MSPs go from 0 to 100 in automation through the last few years has put us in a unique position to watch this. And I really like to focus on the super successful MSPs. And you folks created something. You didn't have a name for it. It wasn't written down. So all I did was wrote it down. We gave it a name. And I'm going to present back to you what I'm seeing happening at the most successful MSPs. We're calling them automation centers of excellence. And the reason why these MSPs did it was because they realized that one-size-fits-all automations did not create enough business value for them to invest in automation. But if they could fix specific business problems that their MSP had, it did provide enough value to make the investment. So how do we get there? How do we get the automations that help business value? Well, it starts with the business coming up with the automation ideas. And that's one of the key principles of the COE. The business prioritizes what to work on. Now, from what we saw, a COE didn't require any new hires. These are just virtual hats people within the organization wore. You had an executive champion. At its simplest, it was a CEO of the MSP that cared about automation. You had an automation champion. The automation champion is not an automation engineer. The automation champion is simply someone with an eye of horrible tickets or horrible manual things that they do every single day that demoralizes them and their team. They're usually embedded inside of a team, like the help desk or the SOC. And then you have an automation engineer, or many, that build automations. So putting it all together was super simple. The automation champions embedded in these teams came up with ideas. So if you were, say, embedded in the SOC, you were complaining to the executive sponsor, I'm sick of these port scan tickets I get every day. And the executive sponsor takes that idea, gives it the thumbs up, thumbs down, and then prioritizes it to the automation engineer. It seems so simple, but what I see a lot of in the industry is the automation engineer just doing whatever the heck they want. No one ever giving them any input and wondering why all the automations are super technical, but none of them benefit my business. And so by doing this, you have the right people doing the right things. So remember I said in the past, we had no automation strategy. Well, now we're starting to see emerging automation strategies. We're beginning to be able to identify things that could be automated. It's not the end-all be-all of strategies, but we're getting there finally. We're not always buying a single-purpose tool. We're realizing what we can automate. And it's usually high-volume tasks that provide business value that require us to go into multiple tools and hopefully find a way to not put a person in the middle of that automation. Folks out here today are looking for automation tools, maybe starting to use automation tools. They're beginning to identify their automation engineers. In the past, we had RMM engineers. We're starting to see automation engineers. Who here has automation in their job title? Raise your hand. And we're starting to see them. Folks are seeing, how are they going to be trained? Will they be certified? all that stuff. All right, this is my predictions. This is fun. We're going to peer into my mind. Some of you folks are doing this already, starting to use the outcomes of your automations to differentiate yourselves in the market. Here's a good example. You know what you've automated. You go to a prospective client and you ask them, amongst other sales questions you're asking them, right? Do you have an MSP today? And you're going to be hoping that they say yes. And then you ask them, well, how long does it take them to do these 8 things that you know you've got automated? You don't go into the conversation with, hey, we're automated. You go into the conversation with the outcomes of the automation to differentiate yourself. Today, your customers are used to using mobile apps. They're used to using web apps. If they need to do accounting work, they bring up the QuickBooks web app, right? If they need a car, they pull up the Uber app. If they need toilet paper, they pull up Amazon. When they want to work with their technical experts, they pull out their rotary phone and call you. We need to give your clients the same app abilities with everything else that they do today, and I believe this is coming in the future. Some of you folks are already doing this, but as an industry, we're going to start looking at APIs while we're making large product purchases. And if you're wondering, what does that mean? An example would be if you're going to change PSA and RMM vendors, does it have an API? Is it a read-write API? Who has access to the API? Will I have access to the API? Will other products I buy have access? Is the vendor trying to create a walled garden where I have to buy all their tools just to get access to the APIs? These are things that we're going to be asking ourselves as we make those buying decisions. So the end result of having these trained automation person or people with beautiful interactive web apps and mobile apps where the client is interacting with your automations in real time like everything else they do in their lives will turn the MSP industry more away from what looks like a services industry to a modern, high-tech, almost SaaS-like industry. Automation platforms will become ubiquitous. And it's because of you folks. There are people out there that don't want to automate. And as you folks continue to gobble up client market share, you will force the people who don't want to automate to do it. I have to warn folks. I like to use the analogy of you're on a plane and the face mask drop. Put the mask on yourself first before you put it on others. The same goes for automating your clients. I strongly believe that this will happen, but let's automate ourselves first. Let's become automation experts. How do you have an automation sales discussion with your clients if you can't have an automation discussion successfully internally within your own business? But this is coming. Now, since you automated them, you provided them some business value, maybe made their EBITDA better because they were able to scale through other means than just hiring. You're not just going to be graded by whether or not the computers work. You're going to be graded by the impact to their business. And imagine how sticky your clients will be when they're running your automations. So that's past, present, and future. I took data from each of these categories, and it allowed me to create a new maturity model. About 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, I came out with my first. I like to do maturity models when I bring new topics to folks. My first one was Aaron's automation maturity model, where we were measuring the maturity of automations themselves. So, for example, the least mature being just a task automation or something kicked off by your RMM, to the most mature, which would be an autonomous process automation that just ran when it needed to run. With that, we've got a new one. It's the MSP automation maturity model. And with this, you folks can see where you are in the maturity life cycle of automation within an MSP. And when you're introducing yourself to others and asking them where they are in their journey, make sure to talk a little bit about where you are in the maturity model. I'm going to go over some of the details on this. I'm going to zoom in, but this slide is specifically so you could take a picture of it before I zoom in on it. On the top row, you have the maturity level. It goes from 0, which is none, to mature, which is 3. And on the left, we've got something we're measuring, like expertise, processes, etc. This makes sense. If we drill into expertise, we go from none all the way to teaching others. Others could be teaching internally. It could be teaching other MSPs, or it could be something you're doing with your clients. As far as documented processes, level 0 has few because they're scared, they're intimidated, and they think processes are something that more mature MSPs do. But immediately on level 1, they have a ton. That's because they realize they're easy. And they're no longer intimidated. In fact, they're so easy, by the next level, they're creating processes to make processes. Alignment between the decision makers and the automation engineer is one of the top 3 success criteria for automation. So in level 0, they're not aligned. There is no COE. By level 1, they're fully aligned. Eventually, there's a center of excellence due to this alignment. Leadership is another top 3 success criteria. What's amazing, you'll see this throughout the maturity model. The biggest jump is not from level 2 advanced to mature. The biggest jump is almost always from none to some, right? The leaders of a none MSP is mad. They're mad that their automation engineers are not working on billable hours. They're mad that they're doing proactive work that will save them money and reduce errors. But the minute they go to the next step, they're aligned and supportive going forward. In fact, to the most mature, these same leaders that were mad turn into automation is going to save our company. Remember, in the past, we had no automation strategy. So we bought a large number of single-purpose tools. As time progresses, we're able to more easily identify what to automate. So fewer of these tools start to come in to our businesses. The overall mentality of the MSP, remember I said in 2021, I talked to a ton of MSPs. They said they were fully automated, no need to make an automation platform. Level 0 thinks they're fully automated, but level 1 immediately following that realizes that they have a ton of work to do. As far as automation products, level 0 believes they have a ton of automation products. They have RMMs. They're named similar to automation products. But by level 1, they're purchasing, evaluating automation products. Level 0, they're fully automated. They have a ton of automation products, but they have no KPIs around them. That's because they're not automated. But by level 1, they're automated enough that they can get some basic KPIs, like time savings. By level 2, they have more advanced KPIs. And one of my favorite ones is from Jared at Raven, where he talks about measuring time to profitability for an automation. If you spend 16 hours making an automation that saves you 10 minutes per run and it runs twice a day, at what date will you become profitable with that automation? So that concludes my presentation. A couple things. This is a vendor neutral conference. I believe this is super important for the MSP space because automation is all about interoperability. It'll be really difficult for us to automate if our products can't talk to each other. So if you enjoy your time here and you want this conference and automation to flourish in the MSP space, take pictures, record your experience, post them in social media so that we can continue this conference. Thank you, everybody. Wait. Who here thinks I should stress out my marketing team? I got to get to the slide. I lost my... There we go. Yes. All right. For all of you folks that use Rewst, immediately right now in your account is version control. And if you go to the top of the screen, you'll see your new version control icon. You select that. You'll get workflow history. You'll see what changed in your automations, when they changed, who changed them. You can select a prior version and revert in real time. Thank you, everybody, for coming to Flow.